Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. In today's episode, we're going to go really deep. Wherever it is that you are in your business, we're talking about the most important aspect of your business, which is, of course, the people. Not only you as the business leader, but the people that are on your team as you grow, the people that you hire, the people that come and go, all of that, which represents so much of your business in the way that you operate, and of course, your ability to grow. So I think that this is a really important topic, and we've got an awesome guest on to talk about all of this stuff from a place of a ton of experience. So let me tell you about today's guest. Her name is Paola Milewicz. She is the founder of Marroquin Consulting, which has a really interesting approach when it comes to HR practices and getting the best talent, retaining the best talent, understanding what motivates your employees and gets them to perform optimally. Paula's approach is really unique for two reasons that I want to call out. One is that she views herself as your business partner. She's been in big business, small business, worked with a bunch of different clients. She understands business at its core and how HR is one component of that. And then the second reason why I really love Paula's work is because she talks so much about solutions for your specific size. Whether you're a startup, whether you are just starting your business, or whether you are a very successful business already, we're going to talk about so many different aspects of the human journey and development and engagement along the way. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Paola Milewicz. All right, Paola, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks so much, Brian. I'm really excited to be here.
Heck yeah. Obviously, I tease listeners just a little bit about all the awesome wisdom that you're going to drop on us here in today's episode, but fill in those backstories and blanks for us. How the heck did you get into all these awesome things that you have, all the incredible working experience you have, and how did you get into launching your own business?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, I was in the path of going to law school. I was very interested in experiencing that industry, and I was involved in it for a very long time. And then HR was kind of introduced to me as an open opportunity for a company that I was working with. I really loved it. I loved the ability to work with people, to, kind of work with different business units and different departments and, identify root causes of issues that were going on, whether from the strategic level or from the employee level, and working in collaboration with the directors and the head of departments to kind of try to find a solution. And from there, I really wanted to branch out and see if I could gain more education in other industries. So I went into biopharma, pharmaceutical, warehousing. I went into even the TV entertainment industry. And it got to the point where I felt that there was something missing in the HR component within these organizations. And how can I bring solutions to smaller businesses or to businesses that don't really know that there's a need for HR, or even startups and nonprofits? So I started to kind of go more into that thought process. And that's how it started to become the evolution of becoming or creating Marroquin Consulting. I was really, really interested in ways to help these kind of businesses address their problems without having to be concerned with a cost factor, or I can't afford sometimes to bring a full-time HR professional. So I really wanted to be able to be that connector, be that person that helps to guide them, to work in collaboration with them to understand where their needs are and where they want to go, and create a path for that success.
Yeah, I love that overview, Paula, especially because it really speaks to something that I teased at the top of today's episode, which is your view really is that HR is truly a partner on the business's side. It's not something that is just for logistics, and it's not something that gets in the way. It's something that enables a business to grow. And with that in mind, I feel like so many of us have different perspectives of what HR is. Maybe we've had bad experiences when we worked in corporate, and it was kind of like, it's just a mountain of paperwork anytime we're talking about HR. But with your vision of HR, I think it's so different. How do you define HR? Obviously, there's functions of HR, there's goals of HR. I'd love to hear your perspectives on those.
It's funny that you say that because when I was working in corporate, a lot of the employees would come to me and feel comfortable in sharing some of their concerns and having a lot of questions, not understanding certain things that, sometimes they're a little bit apprehensive to be able to address because they don't want to make it seem like they didn't read that handbook, or, they're just scared. And I think that a lot of the employees would say, you're so approachable, and sometimes HR seems a little distant, a little disconnected, or the perception of HR is, basically we're here to create an end result to the organization, but not really a representative of the employees and the employee demographic. I think for me, HR is really finding a common ground and being somewhat of a representative of both. You have to understand that there's people involved, and what motivates people is going to be different from one employee to the other. You have to understand what they're looking for personally. Is it personal growth? Is it recognition? And there has to be a human component to it. It has to be a human factor to it. We can't just, make it all logistical or all strategic. It has to be a component of understanding that, if an employee is not performing as a top performer, maybe it's not so much the work, maybe there's something else going on in their personal life, and being that, person that helps to understand what is the root cause of what's going on, and let's get to work on a solution. And so I think it's very important, especially working as a consultant, to be able to understand that how can we motivate employees? How can we work with the employers to understand where their goals are from a business perspective, and also understanding the employee demographic, and kind of create a bridge between the two to help the two get to the end goal that they both are looking for.
Yeah, Paula, it's funny hearing you talk about this overview, and obviously you've used the word important a few times. Thinking back in my own entrepreneurial journey, so many times it felt like the most important thing that I needed to figure out, but it also felt like the most difficult thing, because there's so many aspects of business that we can quote unquote control, or at least have the illusion of control. We can put together a marketing strategy. We can put together an ad campaign. We can get on a sales call. There's so many things that we can do as business owners and entrepreneurs, but one thing we can't do is we can't control people. And that's where the scary stuff comes in, but it is the important stuff. And when I think about all the different ways we interact with people, obviously we interview people, we hire people, we manage people. You talk about productivity. We keep people happy in an ideal world. Talk to us about some of these areas, because there are so many touch points. Everything in our business is a touch point with these people. What are some of those areas that you see business owners getting wrong or overlooking?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a pattern where a lot of times employers feel that money is the number one motivating factor for employees, and sometimes they neglect to really have a conversation with them to understand what their goals are. Career goals should be their independent goals, and then the employer has to create a map of what they need and kind of collaborate with the employee to design what will work for them with the internal organization. So I think a lot of times employers think that the number one thing that's really going to motivate an employee or get them to perform is going to be the monetary factor. And of course, yeah, that's an important factor. That's a valuable piece, but it's also what is that individual looking for. If you don't have routine check-ins with your employee, you could completely get it wrong. There's been employers that feel that, I know what I want, where I want this employee to go, and it's in a completely different direction than the employee is really looking to get into. So I think a lot of times employers fail to have that conversation or that check-in with the employee. Even if it's a low performer or what we identify to be someone that may be struggling in their role, I think it's always important to try to have that conversation to gain an understanding. Where is this person looking to go? Are they being challenged enough in their current position? How do they want to grow internally? How do they see themselves within the organization, without asking your typical, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? But I think it's really having a a firm understanding of how they want to grow individually and within the organization. I feel like that's a number one piece that I have seen employers get wrong. Another one is pretty much they are completely disconnected. Some of them, they just don't check in with their employees. They do their annual reviews. They don't really have a connection of understanding their role, how their role is functioning within the organization. And that kind of leads the employee to feel a little bit demoralized, like they're on their own to figure things out. And that could be detrimental because you could have a really great talent that you are just not fully investing in and really taking the time to cultivate that internal growth and help them understand, how their role could grow internally, or, helping them understand how important their function is within the organization. And a lot of times employees leave because of that disengagement.
Yeah, Paula, I'm so glad that you took us here, because it's, again, here we come back to the things we can't necessarily control and the things that might be a little bit uncomfortable. We are talking about money here, and you talk about money is not the only motivator, whereas that does feel like in these complex human issues, that at least feels like something we can somewhat control is how we're paying other people. But take us beyond that. What are some of those motivators? What are some really great ways to keep people, good people on our team once we find them, besides just compensating them with money?
I feel that employee retention obviously has changed since prior to the pandemic, and it's definitely changed even now. More importantly, employees are looking to receive training, furthering their education, whether it's the role that they're currently in, or it could be just the next step of their role. They are hungry for learning. They're hungry for the opportunity to have a broader knowledge of what they're doing. Another one is, recognition. A lot of times employers have a tendency of being so wrapped up in the business to business development that sometimes they neglect a little bit of, just giving someone a, hey, you did a great job, or that job that you did, or that project was amazing. Thank you so much for your dedication. And that appreciation goes such a long way. A lot of times employees have said, getting time to kind of connect with one another during like a pizza time or like a lunch and learn. It gives an opportunity to feel part of a team, especially after having at times been so disconnected and so remote, that some of them do crave to have. And a lot of times other employees are looking just for, potential growth. Is there an opportunity for me to grow in this company? Is there an opportunity for my role to grow within this company? Do I have an opportunity to do something different within the organization? So it's important to understand and have an ongoing dialogue with employees to know what really motivates them. Is it more of a bonus from like a little bit of a, bonus like a PTO day added to their PTO balance. It could be just out of the box situations, employee recognition, who's the star of the month kind of thing. So these are very different ways that you can recognize the hard work that your team is doing without necessarily having to look at the compensation route.
Yeah, I love those ideas because they're actionable for all of us. And I love those insights, Paula. And it really brings to light, it's a word that you've already mentioned here today, is that you clearly are, I can attest to this with my own interactions with you. You are approachable and you are intentional in the way that you handle these things and really think about these things, which leads me to ask, because I feel like you probably are one of the masters of those check-in conversations. I would imagine that sometimes they're more soft, the way that we're seeing that side of you, that super approachable side of you here today. But I would imagine that when there's a task at hand, you also have crafted, that direct approach of what questions to ask. Talk to us about those employee check-ins, because I'm sure they're not all created equal. Obviously, all humans are different, but when you go into those conversations, what are you thinking about? What's kind of your flow? How do you handle it? How do we even know the right questions to ask, Paula?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And I think a lot of employers struggle with that. And I think that's where guidance is really required from your HR professional. For me, it really is about understanding how well someone is doing. Are there areas that they want to grow? What are the areas that we want them to grow? And also understanding the skill set that they were brought into. So it's kind of going back to the recruitment process, to their 90-day process, and saying, okay, so we've identified these really great skills in the interviewing process and the recruitment process. And so based on that, we made a decision to hire. At the 90-day check-in, we want to see, how are you doing? How are you liking it? What's your feedback so far? It's important because you have a new, fresh set of eyes, and it always helps us to understand, are our onboarding policies and practices really successful? Are they really talking to our new hires, or do we really want to look at, revising some of them based on overall feedback? And so we're kind of creating this introduction and welcoming process for the new hires. And as they completely come into the employee demographic and the employee circle, it's really how well are they adapting to the organization, its policies, how are they managing some of the skill sets that they have, and then how are they progressing in their role. So it's new hires, it's the employees that have already been in the organization, how are they developing? I usually work with their managers, I work with their directors. I want to understand how well they're doing. I'm very integrated, and I'm very collaborative with management to understand how well the employees are doing. And then I circle it back with the employees based on the skill set and the feedback that I get from the managers is how I derive at certain questions. It's easy when you have someone that's a great performer. It's easy when you have someone that's doing their job. It's a little bit challenging when you have scenarios where someone is not performing up to the standards of the role or the organization. It's really about having an open and honest conversation of saying, these are the expectations of the role, and this is where we see or have identified deficiencies. We want to help you to get to be successful in what you're doing. So talk to me a little bit about what are the challenges that you're facing by identifying these deficiencies, what's going on, what's happening, helping them talk and feel comfortable in expressing the challenges that they may be facing helps me and the manager understand that maybe the perception that was had may not be accurate, at which point then we can start designing a plan of, do we need to just kind of evaluate them for a certain period of time? Do we need to put them on a performance improvement plan, which I really like to call success plan, because people get scared of the performance improvement plan, and really start to kind of create that path for success for the role. Sometimes it happens, and it's just a matter of asking the right questions of saying, how are you doing? How's it going? Or more detailed role-related questions. And sometimes even if you have certain follow-ups and if you have ongoing success plans, it just may not be the right fit. And at that point, we have to have a different type of discussion. But it's important to have that collaborative effort with that manager.
Yeah, Paula, first of all, I love the term success plan. I'm such a big believer in the power of words. And I think that phrasing it that way really does show that this is a path, this is a plan for you to succeed here, which ultimately is the goal. None of us work with anyone and hope that it fails. So I definitely love that perspective. And Paula, the thing that I really want to call out here is that even within that answer, even when we talk about check-ins, you initially, the first thing you did when I asked you that question is you went back to two different phases of the success path for any new employer, any team member, which is you went straight to recruitment and the first 90 days. I'd love to hear your perspectives on those two parts of the cycle, because I feel like they have to be really important. I know that when we talk about branding, for example, everyone wants to say, oh, what does the inside of the restaurant look like? What are the seats? What are the colors that we see in there? But branding really starts from the first ever second someone ever hears about it, long before they've ever walked in. And I'm sure HR is the same way, that recruitment sets the tone for it. And obviously the first 90 days is our first experience. Paula, how do we make the best of those phases? Because that's even before they've walked in the door.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge that in the last 2 years, a lot of employers have been facing. Is really, how do I attract the right talent? How do I get that posting to stand out? And then, I've seen a lot of cheesy postings and some that are very questionable, let's say. But I think it really starts in that first interaction. It's your introduction to these candidates about the role. So I think it's important to highlight all the incentives that an organization offers its employees. What is it that you want? Some are more specific positions, so it's harder to fill. So you want to be very specific in your job title to make sure that what you're trying to attract is actually what you're attracting. I think it's kind of like correlated to manifesting. What kind of like ideal candidate do you want to manifest for your organization? So I think it's important that it starts in how you introduce the organization to the pool of candidates that you potentially will be targeting. It's important to make sure that you are specific, that you are within federal, state, and local laws. So if your local laws are saying that you're not supposed to ask for salary, make sure you post your salary range. Make sure you're doing a complete market analysis to ensure that what you're looking for coincides with what the market looks for, or at least the range that it's supposed to be in, so that you're attracting the right people. I've seen mistakes on that side where it's not posted, or it's posted incorrectly, and then you lose a lot of talent because of what you have posted. So that's very important. Highlighting the incentives, and I think also understanding the kind of candidate that you're looking for. So having as much information about the qualifications, the requirements is very valuable. Now, you're going to always get candidates that just apply to apply. That you can't help, but at least you're trying to target a specific kind of candidate based on what the organizational role is and the qualifications of the organization. And then what we do is during the interviewing process, obviously I like to ask a lot of, behavioral questions. I like the candidate to kind of guide me through their career journey. There's always an understanding, there's always an explanation, and rather than going through a very rigid, why did you leave this, or what's going on, where's this gap, I let them tell me their story. They feel comfortable, they feel more relaxed. I usually do an initial phone screen, which helps them be in their space. They don't have to be as nervous, but they are more relaxed in sharing what their career story has been to that point. And then everything that I get from our conversation, whether it's communication, adaptability, problem solving, all that, we're going to move forward. And if that candidate is offered a position, we're going to look for these skill sets that were discussed or addressed during the interviewing process as part of their 90-day. So during the 90-day period, it's really, you're getting adapted to the organization, you're getting adapted to the policies, how things are, procedures, just the internal ins and outs of a company, but you're also displaying a lot of the skill sets and a lot of the pieces and the knowledge and the experience that we discussed during the interview, allowing it into your role. So it's important, once we have those 90 days, to be able to kind of circle back with the employee and now set goals for them for the remainder of the year based on the position, and then also have them set goals for themselves so that, again, we're working in collaboration with the employee and then checking in. How are you doing? How do you like it so far? How's your manager? These are all very important areas that, as an HR professional, I want to know about, because a lot of times we may not be aware. If their onboarding process is great, but their manager is not, really stepping up to their role, then, that becomes an internal situation that we have to kind of take care of immediately. But it's important to kind of bring them onto that 90-day overview, feedback, and then bring them back into, the role and getting them more acclimated in their role.
Yeah, I love how intentional your thought process is at every single step of the way. It almost feels like second nature to you. I could ask you about anything, Paula, and you're ready for it. And with that in mind, one area that I do want to ask you about is those goals, because it sounds silly to hire someone without having those tangible goals in place. And it's something that you've talked about, whether you say goals or evaluation or we analyze these things. Obviously, metrics are an underlying point of every aspect of business. And it sounds weird to tie metrics to human beings, but obviously to some degree as an HR business partner, you understand that side of it. So Paula, what metrics do you even pay attention to? What metrics should we have in place for maybe new team members as well as existing team members? I'm really curious how we even go about the evaluation, the measurement of all these efforts that we're putting in.
Well, I always think it's important to understand each role within the organization. So I talked a little bit about manager disconnection. That's a real thing. Maybe not the right wording, but a lot of times it's important for managers to understand what role that their employee is in. And then, if you have a new hire and if you have someone that's been in the position for a long time, it's also important to understand how you continue to develop that employee as they continue to be within the organization, as they continue to work with the company. We all hear about SMART goals. I think, I kind of move away from, a set standard that everybody uses or a set template. I kind of use them sometimes, but I think it's important to also understand the role itself. If I have a junior level person, I need to understand as a manager how I want to develop them. So maybe my goals for that role would be communication, adaptability, how well they problem solve, their teamwork, how well they work independently, how they escalate matters to someone of a supervisory or managerial position. Obviously, my goals are going to be completely different if I'm talking to someone that is a more senior level person. So if I'm contemplating moving that senior level person into a managerial role, I need to evaluate and assess how well they interact with other departments, how well they manage tough situations or challenges that may arise. And I always think it's important understanding the role, understanding how you can develop that person or that role itself. It's a two-part thing. It's the person and the role. What are the set expectations for the person and for the role, and then designing a set of goals based on that. So it could be, skill set goals, personal growth goals. It could be education. I need you to, for example, get a project manager certification in order for you to grow into a project manager. It could be, additional training and development if you're in the IT field, getting more certifications. It really depends on the role, but goals are usually set on, how well you want to develop the soft skill sets, and really the questions that you need to design are based on how that role is supposed to grow. I'm not sure if I answered it correctly or if I really answered the question, but they're really designed based on, the position within the organization, having like that conversation and that ongoing dialogue to understand how that employee wants to grow as well.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing that I think is such an important part of your approach is I keep using this word because it's probably the word that I respect the most in the way that people do business, is that intentionality. Paula, so much of the way that you answer these questions is really by first looking inward and saying, what is it that we need, that we want, that we expect from the person who fills this role? Because that really is the step. I mean, here we are, when I ask you about metrics, for example, you don't just say, are they showing up on time? What is their output in their job? You're first saying, what is it that we want and need? And let's start measuring based on that. So I think it's a really smart approach. I will say, Paula, time is flying by in today's episode. As we're coming to the end, I still want to squeeze in one thing that I think makes you really unique, because I see a lot of HR professionals, consultants, agencies. I see so many different businesses and different sizes, different industries. But I really respect your size-based solutions. You are very cognizant of the fact that businesses at different sizes have different HR needs. Walk us through some of those considerations, because Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur listeners, some of them are still in the Wantrepreneur phase. Some of them are making $5K, $10K a month. Some of them have grown 7, 8-figure businesses we have listeners in. So what are your considerations across those different business sizes as we scale up, as we grow?
I think that's a great question. And I'm sorry our time is getting so short. It seems like it's so much fun. Well, I think the idea of size-based solutions is the fact that understanding that I could have a really great startup that has all the capital and wants to hire top. And they usually sometimes, are focused more on what's going to be the return on investment. There's a lot on the line, and I totally understand. But in that process, you have different needs. And let's say a nonprofit organization that has, 12 or 13 employees. So it's really understanding and speaking to management to understand what are the goals, what are the immediate goals, and then what are the long-term goals. What are you looking for? A solution for a startup that's looking for, to get people to expand, to get people to make the organization become more aware, or to really get out there and start sales or whatever it may be, is going to be completely different than an organization that is looking to bring people on because whatever they had wasn't working. So it's really about going back to, let's say, the beginning, and understanding and learning from each person or each business what it is that they're looking to achieve. That's my number one question. I want to understand, what is the issue that they are facing, what is the challenge, and what is it that they look to achieve. When I have those two factors, it helps me to understand and design a strategy. Now, there are times where I have those two factors and it becomes an onion that starts peeling other things, which is fine. I like to be very clear and very communicative to whoever I'm the point of contact with, to say, this is what we've discovered because of ABC, so this is a priority, or walk them through whatever it needs. I think what I've learned in being in corporate and working in diverse industries is that in addition to the employees being different and having different expectations, every business model is going to be different. Every business goal will be different. So it's important to identify, where are they now? Where would they like to be? And create a strategy specific for them to be able to get them where they are looking to get. So a startup is going to be different than a nonprofit. A nonprofit is going to be different than a medium-sized organization. And that's going to be different than a small business that wants to grow. So it's really having ongoing conversations and understanding the challenges and coming up with sustainable solutions specific for their business model to get them to where they're looking to arrive.
Yes, listeners, did you see it once again from Paola there? That level of intentionality, that so much of us solving these problems, or even beginning to solve these problems in our businesses, starts with first asking questions, figuring out, where are we today? And most importantly, where do we want to be? So Paola, I love those insights. With all of those things in mind, I always love giving my guests the hardest part of every episode here at the end, which is in some way coming up with one action, one strategy that you really hope that everyone walks away from our conversation here today with all the different things that we talked about. What's the one thing that you hope everyone sits down and says, you know what, it's time for me to take this seriously or more intentionally? What's something that you think every business owner would benefit from?
I think really listening to their employees, understanding their challenges, and understanding that employees are going to come up to them with many different things. It's kind of also weeding out what's a real issue and what is maybe something that's more surface level of a problem. I think really understanding and listening to employees helps them understand the internal changes that may need to be made, the internal revisions, or just looking at themselves inwardly. Am I doing things the right way? Am I really retaining my team? I think it all starts from communication. That's my number one. Communication is ideal. Listening to your team, understanding the roles within the organization. I think it's extremely important. If you want to have a successful team, you have to have that open communication. Of course, there's times that you can't share everything because there's some confidential things that need to stay confidential. But I think the worst I've seen is when employees have perception and then rumors start circulating, and then it just creates a barrier to success. So being transparent, having communication, open communication with the team, listening to the team is very important.
Yes, I love the direction that you took that in. It's really just been such a theme here in our session today about that level of intentionality, that level of communication. That's one thing that I also want to stress that has come up time and time again in your perspectives and your experiences, is that we just really, as business owners, we need to open those lines of communication with everyone on our team. So I love that perspective. Paola, you've been a wealth of knowledge. I know that listeners are going to be keen to check out more about you, the awesome work that you're doing. I love it. Right on your website, you wrote the Marroquin own approach. They're going to want to read that stuff. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here to learn more about you and your business?
Oh, yes. Well, I would love for them to come and visit www.marroquinconsulting.com, because I think it kind of goes hand in hand with my approach, the approach that I wanted to make very specific to Marroquin Consulting. And it also tells a little bit about the story. It tells a little bit about what I spoke today, the different kind of strategies and how each business module is different. And so it really kind of gives more detail to the conversation and some of the points that I brought into the conversation today.
Yes, listeners, you all know the drill. Don't be shy. Go check out Paula's website. It really is everything she just said. It complements our conversation so much today, and it goes deeper so that you can really get a feel for how Paula goes into businesses as a partner. I can't stress that enough. I think it's so key to her approach is as a business partner, understanding the business side, the people side, the HR side, combining all of it into a way that you can start fixing these problems and start working towards your goals and the future state that you're achieving for. So listeners, definitely check the show notes wherever it is that you're tuning in. Her website is marroquinconsulting.com. We're linking to it down below. Otherwise, Paula, thank you so much for coming and being so generous with us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a delight. I appreciate it.